Hey Optimancers, Chris here. So I recently finished up a series of videos where I talked about the summoning spells from Tasha's and then did some builds kind of centered around them. With 3 builds I did, I used Summon Undead, Summon Shadow Spawn, and Summon Aberration. And as always, my viewers were great in providing their own experiences and suggestions in the comments for those videos. And one suggestion did come up a number of times. And it all kind of starts with the Summon Fey spell. So here's the template for the Summon Fey spell. It's a 3rd level spell, and like all the summon spells from Tasha's, it has really nice scaling when we cast it with a higher level slot. I mean, even upcasting it with a 4th level slot means that you're basically doubling your offensive output. One downside to this is the Fey Spirit doesn't fly or have ranged attack, so it's not good against just any enemy. The short sword attack, though, suggests that we could equip our Summon Fey Spirit with a magical short sword, giving them far more reliable damage. But one unique property of the Fey Spirit is their Fey Step bonus action. It says the Fey magically teleports up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space it can see. Then one of the following effects occurs based on the Fey's chosen mood, and you choose that when you cast the spell. So if you choose the Fuming option, then it has advantage on the next attack roll it makes before the end of this turn. Now, that's nice for increasing the chance to hit on a single attack, but honestly, the big draw of the Fey Step is the ability to teleport away from the enemy, not towards it. So I think it's just a lot more likely to be destroyed. Then there's what's my personal favorite, Mirthful. The Fey can force one creature it can see within 10 feet of it to make a Wisdom saving throw against our spell save DC. Unless the saving throw is successful, the target is charmed by us and our Fey Spirit for a minute or until it takes damage. Like I said, this is my favorite. First off, it's a nice defensive feature. The Fey can make their attacks and then charm the creature that they just attacked. And if it fails its saving throw, it can't return the favor. Yes, lots of creatures are immune to the charm condition, so that is definitely a limitation. Also, remember, the charm condition isn't mind control. Here's the charm condition. It says a charmed creature can't attack the charmer or target the charmer with harmful abilities or magical effects, and the charmer has advantage on ability checks to interact socially with the creature. So like I said, this isn't mind control. Like if you say, "Hey, evil dragon, sorry we've been killing you and everything, but how about you just give us your treasure hoard?" Well, as written, the way this should work is the DM should probably tell you to go fly a kite. However, if they want, they could set a ridiculously high DC for that check, and you would have advantage on the roll. In other words, that part isn't very useful in combat. But the not being targeted by attacks or harmful effects, that sure is. Though I should mention, there is nothing keeping the creature from targeting anyone else in the party, and that's probably what you should expect them to do. But when your challenge is keeping your Fey Spirit alive, that will definitely help. And I should mention this feature is especially nice if you happen to be a Fey Wanderer Ranger. Beguiling Twist gives you a really nice reaction whenever a creature we can see within 120 feet of us succeeds on its saving throw against our Fey Spirit's charming attempt. Then we can attempt to charm or frighten a different creature as long as it's within range for up to a minute. This is just a nice combination. And if you're wondering if I'll put this combination into a build, well, I actually already have. So I'll link your screen to that build, which I called Quiver. And if you like frightening your enemies, Quiver is really, really good at doing that. But that's not the Fey Step rider that I was being told about. The 3rd Fey Spirit mood is Tricksy. So when the Tricksy Fey takes their Fey Step, they can fill a 5-foot cube within 5 feet of it with magical darkness that lasts until the end of its next turn. So we start with Summon Fey and the Tricksy Fey Spirit specifically. Then we need Devil's Sight. So there's a Warlock invocation called Devil's Sight. Here it is. You can see normally in darkness, both magical and non-magical, to a distance of 120 feet. So if you want Devil's Sight on your character, there's 2 ways you can get it. The first is to take at least 2 levels in Warlock, and then you can just select Devil's Sight as one of your invocations. The second way is through a feat. So Eldritch Adept is one of the feats in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. In order to take the feat, we need the spellcasting or pack magic feature, and if we can summon Fey, then we definitely have one of those 2 features. It says, studying in occult lore, you learn 1 Eldritch invocation option of your choice from the Warlock class. Your spellcasting ability for the invocation is Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma, and if the invocation has a prerequisite of any kind, then you can only choose it if you're already a warlock that qualifies. Then you can switch out your Eldritch Adept feature for a different invocation whenever you gain a level, which actually is a nice feature of this feat, by the way. So I think you should know now where I'm going with this. But here's what the suggestions always boil down to. Step 1, get the Summon Fey spell and summon Tricksy Fey. Step 2, get Devil's Sight, either through Warlock or the Eldritch Adept feat. Then in combat, hand off the Fey Spirit a magical short sword, have them attack the enemy, then have them phase step beside our character and place their magical darkness over our character's space. Now for the next turn, we're obscured, so enemies can't target us with anything that requires line of sight, but we can see them, so any attacks against us also have disadvantage. And then finally on our turn, we'll have advantage on any attack roll we make because we can't be seen, but we can see them. Then after our turn, the Fey Spirit can just rinse and repeat. Move up to the enemy, attack, phase step away, then place the magical darkness over us again. And since Darkvision can't see through magical darkness, it's like having greater invisibility in combat. And it's just better than the darkness spell plus Devil's Sight combination because the darkness is only taking up our character's space, so it's not interfering with the other characters in our party. So first off, I should say, yes, I was aware of this tactic already before I made those summoning builds, and it's also true I didn't make a build using that combination. So why not? Okay, so to start with, if you interpret the rules differently than me, that's fine. I'm not telling you how you have to interpret the rules, but I do rules analysis on this channel, and what I'll do is I'll read the rules, I'll analyze them, and then I come to an interpretation, and then I will explain why I've come to that interpretation to you. And the way I've read the rules, this interaction doesn't work, or probably doesn't work, the way people think it does. And so I'm going to explain why that is. But again, if you want to keep playing the way you're playing, if this is different than the way you thought it was supposed to work, and you don't like the explanation I'm about to give, feel free to ignore it. But I do want to explain why I didn't make this build, because I govern myself based on my own rules interpretations. Now, I'm going to explain why I don't think this interaction works the way that it's commonly interpreted to work. However, before I do that, I do want to address the comparison of greater invisibility with darkness and Devil's Sight. So greater invisibility gives you the invisible condition. Here it is. You can see there's 2 bullet points. The first one says you can't be seen, obviously, and then the second one says you have advantage on attacks and disadvantage to be attacked. The weird thing is that if you have, say, True Sight, well then we're removing the first bullet point, but the second bullet point should still exist unless we actually remove the invisible condition. And Jeremy Crawford was asked about that. Like, is that how you intend this to work? And he said, yeah, absolutely. That's how we intend it to work. In fact, that's why we included spells like Fairy Fire that prevent you from getting any benefit from the invisible condition, because those are spells we wanted to turn off both bullet points, but otherwise you get to keep the second one as long as you keep the invisible condition. And I saw that interview and I remember thinking, no way. There is no way that you designed the Player's Handbook back in 2014, put the invisible condition like that, and you intended that particular interaction, because it's not obvious, right? If you are just playing the game, there's nothing specifically saying, oh, by the way, keep in mind that this second bullet point still remains. You would think there would be some kind of indication beyond like careful analysis of the rules to notice that the second bullet point isn't necessarily turned off. However, whether he intended it or not in 2014, he clearly still intends it to work that way now, because the playtest for 1D&D came out and they kept the 2 bullet points. And now I know for a fact that Jeremy Crawford knows about this interaction because he talked about it. So it's not like he wasn't aware, but he's chosen to keep the invisible condition the same, so he has obviously intended for it to continue to work the same. And I've kind of come around on this because I thought about it and I thought, wow, that's weird. But from a balance perspective, it's actually good design. Because Devil's Sight and Darkness, they're easy, right? You can be low level and you can do them. But greater invisibility, that's not easy. It's a higher level spell. It uses concentration. And there is no other way in the game. I went through every way you could get invisible in the game, and there's just no other way to get an extended invisibility that doesn't turn off when you make attacks or anything like that. So from a balance perspective, the difference between invisible and darkness and devil's sight, I think, makes perfect sense. Now, if you watch this channel regularly, you've heard this all before. If you haven't heard this all before, however, I did do an in-depth look of invisibility. I played that clip with Jeremy Crawford and do the full analysis of the rules. So it's linked up above for you. You can take a look. By the way, I don't know how many times I'm going to say this in this video, but just because I interpret a rule a certain way, just because the designers say that's supposed to work, doesn't mean that that's how you have to play at your table. If you prefer it, that greater invisibility is just straight out turned off if somebody has true sight, then keep playing that way. That's fine. I'm just telling you the way I interpret the rules, and in this case, the way the designers say the rules are supposed to work, but you play the way you want to play. Now, my issue with the interaction of the Tricksy Phase, Magical Darkness, and Devil's Sight is different than what I was just talking about. I think, actually, this interaction is far less reliable than Darkness and Devil's Sight, unfortunately. Here is my major issue with this whole thing, and that is that there's nothing under Darkvision that says it can't see through Magical Darkness. Yes, there are lots of Magical Darknesses that specifically say they block Darkvision, but there's nothing under Darkvision saying it can't see through Magical Darkness. And in this case, that's a big problem. So the Darkvision Special Sense says you can see in the dark within a specific range. You can see in dim light as if it were bright light, and darkness as if it were dim light, and you can't discern colors, only shades of gray. What it doesn't say is that it can't see in darkness if it's magical. It's not there. If you want to add the sentence to the end that says you can't see in darkness if it's magical, then go ahead for your table. But if you thought Darkvision said that, it doesn't. Maybe it says something under vision and light. Darkness creates a heavily obscured area. Characters face darkness outdoors at night, even most moonlit nights, within the confines of an unlit dungeon or a subterranean vault, or in the area of magical darkness. So it does mention magical darkness, but once again, nothing about Darkvision not seeing through it. So if we look at the Fey Spirit stat block, it says the Fey can fill a 5-foot cube within 5 feet of it with magical darkness, which lasts until the end of its next turn. So if we're just looking at the rules here, so we're going to look at the rules on Darkvision, and they don't say anything about not seeing in magical darkness. They just say you can see in darkness. Then we look at the rules of vision and light, and they say that some kinds of darkness are magical. They don't say anything about Darkvision not being able to see through it. Then we have the Tricksy Phase feature, and it doesn't say anything about Darkvision not being able to see through it. Those are all the relevant rules for this interaction. And none of them indicate that Darkvision doesn't see through this darkness. Now, I understand there is a general opinion out there that Darkvision can't see through any magical darkness, like it's a universal thing. But that's not the case. We have specific cases where it can't see through magical darkness, and it's always laid out in those specific cases. So let me go through the examples. Here's the darkness spell. A creature with Darkvision can't see through this darkness. So it's laying out in the spell description, not in the general rules, that in this case it's creating a darkness that Darkvision cannot see through. Then we have the Maddening Darkness spell, and we can see it has the same wording. Creature with Darkvision can't see through this darkness. So it is, again, creating a special prohibition for this spell, preventing Darkvision from seeing through it. Darkstar spell, same thing. A creature with Darkvision can't see through the magical darkness. Again, it's creating a prohibition under this spell, preventing Darkvision from seeing through it. But these are the limitations on Darkvision that are special provisions of these spells. And that prohibition is specifically laid out in their spell descriptions, not in the general rules. So we should assume that just because magic created darkness, that doesn't mean it blocks Darkvision universally. And in fact, I can find another case where we can use magic to create darkness where Darkvision should be able to work. When you cast the Hollow spell, you can choose any of these effects listed to fill the hallowed area. And one of them is darkness. It says darkness fills the area. Normal light, as well as magical light created by spells of a lower level than the slot used to cast a spell, can't illuminate the area. Now, it doesn't use the wording magical darkness, but it's obviously magical darkness because it is created by a spell. Does it block Darkvision? Well, assuming that we don't actually change the Darkvision trait to include Darkvision can't see through magical darkness, there's nothing in the general rules preventing Darkvision from seeing here. And I think that's the way it's intended. It kind of reads that way. Now, you might ask, then why does Devil's Sight specifically talk about magical darkness? Because if, the Darkvision trait is supposed to allow you to see in magical darkness, unless it specifically says otherwise, then why does Devil's Sight bother saying that you can see normally in magical darkness? Well, the reason it does that is because there are these spells that prevent Darkvision from working, and they're just making it clear that if you have Devil's Sight, you can see in those spells, like the Darkness spell being the most common. Now, Devil's Sight's a little bit interesting. It's an interesting case because, first off, it has a strange interaction, and this is the player character version. The monster version just says that your Darkvision can see through magical darkness, but the player character version says you can see normally in darkness and magical darkness, which then suggests that you see in darkness and magical darkness as if it's bright light, even though Darkvision sees through it as if it's dim light, and there's nothing about dim light. So if you have Devil's Sight and you're in dim light, you don't see in it as if it's bright light, you just see in it as it's dim light. So it's an odd interaction, and I assume the reason why the player character version is different than the monster version is just because they know that players might take this and not have Darkvision already. And if it just said that your Darkvision can see through magical darkness, then it would be a useless trait if you don't already have Darkvision. So they're just ensuring that you have the ability to see in darkness and magical darkness regardless. So I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn here, but I ended up having a conversation with someone who made the suggestion of the Tricksy Fey, and a comment came up while I was having that conversation that said the following. Sorry for piggybacking on this, but would you say then that people with Darkvision that are standing outside the AoE of Hunger of Hadar can see inside it? After all, it only states that creatures within the area are blinded, and while we're at it, how do Hunger of Hadar and Devil's Sight interact, in your opinion? Same thing, if you're standing inside the AoE, you can't see anything, but if you're standing outside, you can? Okay, so I want to answer the question, and the thing is I'm not even sure if Hunger of Hadar is a relevant spell for me to talk about when I'm talking about spells that create darkness, because I don't know if Hunger of Hadar creates darkness or not. It says you create a 20-foot radius sphere of blackness and bitter cold, and no light, magical or otherwise, can illuminate the area, and creatures fully within the area are blinded. So notice the wording is really different here. It doesn't mention Darkvision at all. It says if you're in the area, you're blinded. Now, if this spell creates darkness, that makes no sense. Because if you have True Sight, you should be able to see through it if it's darkness. But a creature with True Sight can still be blinded, so then you wouldn't be able to. But I've thought, what if the blackness doesn't mean darkness? What if it means like it's an inky fog? Well, then it would make sense that True Sight can't see through it, because True Sight can't see through fog cloud either. So personally, to answer the question, that's how I interpret it. I interpret this creating an inky fog rather than darkness. However, it doesn't say it's an inky fog. That's just my best guess. And if you think it creates darkness, and I could totally see why you might. I mean, it says you open a gateway to the dark between the stars. That would imply darkness. So if you think it's darkness, that should inform how it works when you're outside the area. And if you think it's an inky fog, that also should inform how it works when you're outside the area. So the way I interpret it, then Darkvision, Devil's Sight, True Sight, none of them are going to allow you to see through it because it's an inky fog. But I can't tell you with any confidence that that's the right way to read this spell. That's just the way I personally have guessed. But I should probably address, there's this, let's be honest, it's a bad faith reading of the spell that if you become blinded within the area, you stay blinded forever with no saving throw. And the explanation is this. If you get a condition and it doesn't tell you when the condition ends, it's permanent. Now, I will save you searching through the rules for looking for the spot where it says conditions are permanent unless it says otherwise. It's not in there. They've made it up because they have a bad faith reading of this spell and they want to justify it. So they make up a rule that doesn't exist. So you might ask the question, well then, how long does a condition last if it doesn't tell you? And the answer is, they tell you. They always tell you. They say it might last for until the end of your next turn, or until you succeed on a saving throw, or for a minute, or in severe cases, it might say until the condition is removed. Those are the most severe. But they always say how long they last. In this case, does it say how long it lasts? Yes, it does. It lasts, well, fully within the area. Now, if you still don't get it, here's a handy flowchart for you. Am I blinded by the Hunger of Hadar spell? Are you fully within the area of a Hunger of Hadar sphere of magical blackness? No? Then you aren't blinded. Yes? Then you are blinded. What if you move? Well, are you fully within the area of a Hunger of Hadar sphere of blackness? You see, it's not that hard, but I hope that helps. Now we're thankfully going to leave Hunger of Hadar behind, and we're going to go back to talking about the tricksy Fey creating magical darkness and using Devil Sight to see through it. So the reason I think it doesn't work is because, as far as I can tell, there's nothing preventing Darkvision from seeing through it, and guess what? Darkvision is super common. Most creatures have it in the game, so it's just not going to work very often. Now, is it possible that the designers intended for the Fey Spirit's magical darkness to block Darkvision? For sure, of course it is. Maybe they meant that the Tricksy Fey's Fey Step creates 5 feet of darkness and we're supposed to treat it like the darkness spell. Or maybe they intended it to create just run-of-the-mill magical darkness without the special provision preventing the dark vision that's in the darkness spell. Honestly, I don't know what they intended, but I know what they did. What they did is they created darkness that doesn't say it blocks dark vision. Now, what if it did stop dark vision? Do I think that would be good? Well, yeah, honestly, I think it would be very good. Sure, there's the issue with blind sight and true sight and devil sight, but there's still a lot of creatures without those. And disadvantage to be attacked and advantage on all our attacks is pretty darn good, especially when it's just a rider on a summon spell that's already reasonably good. I mean, we wouldn't even necessarily put it on our own character. Any character in our party with devil sight or blind fighting could get massive boosts from this. But on my builds, I try to follow the rules as I understand them. And so this was just a non-starter for me. But do you even agree with my interpretation here? Is the magical darkness of Tricksy Fey something that blocks dark vision by your interpretation? I mean, I'll admit there is a precedent on how magical darkness usually interacts with dark vision, so maybe that precedent is enough. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time a stat block of a creature has a feature that's so condensed it leaves us a bit in the dark. Share your thoughts in the comments. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.